James leaned against the counter, coffee in hand, when his phone buzzed. Unknown number. Curious, he answered, and time seemed to stop. It was the New York Philharmonic. They'd had a last-minute dropout. An audition spot just opened up for that night. One night. One chance. The role he had chased for decades was suddenly within reach. He nearly dropped the mug. As the call continued, James's eyes wandered to the living room, where a tiny pink violin case leaned against the couch. His daughter Lily had her very first recital that evening, the one she'd practiced for all month. She was only 6, but she had insisted he sit in the front row. "Promise, Daddy," she'd asked the night before, her eyes wide with hope. His stomach tightened. He turned back to the call. The voice on the other end waited for an answer, promising it would be a fast audition, a formality really, given his credentials. This could be it. The dream he'd nurtured since his teenage years, the one that slipped through his fingers too many times. James opened his mouth, paused, then looked at the photo on the fridge, him and Lily, laughing under a tree. He took a deep breath. "Thank you," he said quietly. "But I have somewhere else I need to be tonight." He hung up. In another life, he'd have said yes. But not this time. Not when someone else's dream was about to begin, and she needed him in the audience. The school auditorium buzzed with nervous energy. Parents fumbled with programs, teachers hushed chattering students, and the faint squeak of violin strings echoed from backstage. James sat in the second row, clutching a tiny bouquet of daisies, Lily's favorite. He shifted in his seat, heart pounding, though he wasn't the one about to perform. The lights dimmed. One by one, children filed on stage, their bows shaking slightly, their feet barely reaching the floor. Then came Lily, in a pale blue dress, her hair in 2 neat braids. She scanned the crowd, hesitating for a heartbeat, until her eyes landed on him. Her face lit up. She gave a small wave, then took her place. James felt a lump rise in his throat. Lily raised her violin. The first note wavered, soft and unsure, but then she found her rhythm. It wasn't perfect, but it was full of something deeper, pride, joy, and a quiet courage. Every note reached him in a way no concert hall ever had. He forgot about New York, about auditions, about everything except the little girl on that stage who had no idea her father had just given up his lifelong dream for this very moment. The audience clapped politely when she finished, but James stood, clapping with tears in his eyes. Lily beamed. It wasn't the stage he thought he'd stand on that night. But watching her bow with pride, James realized, he hadn't lost a dream. He'd simply passed it on. The years rolled by quietly, like pages turning in a book no one noticed was being written. James never spoke about the audition he turned down. He didn't need to. The New York Philharmonic faded into the background of early mornings and late-night lullabies, of peanut butter sandwiches and science fair posters. His life became rhythm and routine, repairing instruments at the music store, giving private lessons, always smiling when Lily came bounding through the door after school. At night, when the house was still, he would sometimes take out his cello. Not to practice. Just to feel it. The deep, warm tones filled the living room like a memory trying to speak. He never played long, just enough to remind himself of the part of him he'd folded away like a forgotten song. Lily grew. She moved from "Twinkle Twinkle" to Bach and beyond, her fingers quicker, her ears sharper. She watched him carefully, though he didn't know it. She noticed how his shoulders slumped after long days. How his eyes glistened just slightly when he watched her play. And she heard the way he played alone, when he thought no one was listening, those notes were different. Fuller. Sadder. Wiser. He never said it aloud, but she understood, he'd given something up. And quietly, in her own heart, she made a promise. One day, somehow, she would give it back. Because the music he gave her wasn't just in the notes, it was in the sacrifice, and in the silence that followed. The community hall was warm with laughter and the smell of home-cooked food. Streamers hung from the ceiling, and a handmade banner read, "Happy 60th, James." Friends, former students, and neighbors filled the room, swapping stories about the quiet man who had tuned their violins, taught their kids, and never once talked about himself. James stood near the cake, bashful in the spotlight. He chuckled as someone handed him a comically large birthday card. Then Lily stepped forward, a microphone in hand, her smile tender but trembling slightly. "There's something I've been planning for a long time," she said. The room hushed. "When I was 6, my dad gave up the biggest opportunity of his life, to be at my recital. He never told me, but I found out later. I don't think he ever regretted it, but I've always wanted to repay that moment." James froze, heart thudding. She looked at him, her voice steady now. "So, with the help of some very kind people, including a few you might recognize from the New York Philharmonic," a few heads turned in surprise, "we've arranged something." Lily turned to a projector. A video began playing, a formal invitation for James to perform a piece she had composed for him, alongside members of the Philharmonic, in 1 month's time. The screen faded to black. Silence hung for a beat. Then James, hands trembling, brought them to his face. Eyes wet, he laughed through the tears. His dream hadn't died. It had just been waiting, for her to carry it back. The lights dimmed inside Carnegie Hall. A hush fell over the audience, hundreds of faces waiting, breath held. Backstage, James stood in the wings, cello in hand, dressed in a black tuxedo that fit like it was made for this very moment. He closed his eyes for a second, steadying himself. Not from nerves, but from the weight of what this night meant. He stepped out under the lights. In the front row, Lily sat tall, hands folded, her eyes shimmering with pride. The orchestra around him tuned quietly, then fell still. The conductor raised the baton. The first note poured from James's cello like something long held in, rich, full, and alive. The piece Lily had written wasn't just music. It was memory. It told their story in crescendos and quiet pauses, a missed audition, a little girl's recital, years of waiting, and a quiet hope that never truly faded. Every note was a thank you. Every rest was a moment he'd given her. Tears came freely now, not just from Lily, but from others who didn't even know the full story. They felt it. They heard it. When the final note faded into silence, the room erupted. A standing ovation surged like a wave through the crowd. But James didn't move. He looked at Lily, his eyes soft, overwhelmed. He had dreamed of this stage all his life. But standing here now, he knew, the true masterpiece wasn't the performance. It was the journey that brought him here, and the daughter who never forgot.